The moment you can transfer the power of my idea to our idea is the moment you accelerate its opportunity to get done. If you tend to be a reductionist, if you're reporting and working with reductionists, people who constantly shoot your ideas down, just remind them and yourself, we're not green lighting this idea for execution today. We are just greenhousing it together.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
Today we have Duncan Wardle on the show, and he is the former head of creativity and innovation at Disney. Now, I think we can all use a little Duncan right now, especially with how much disruption is going on in our lives, personally and professionally. So innovation is the cure to this disruption, right? It is the thing that will help us navigate this unknown and meet it where it is. So in this episode, Duncan talks through specific scenarios you might find yourself in and literally what to do as a very first step in this scenario. For example, we're all famous for getting into these brainstorming meetings or these whiteboarding sessions. Sometimes it's with ourselves, sometimes it's with a big team, sometimes it's with two people. But how do you conduct an ideation session that's productive, that actually goes somewhere where you feel like you're getting something out of it? Duncan shares some great ideas on this, as you can imagine. In our conversation, we also talk through innovation as it relates to marketing and social media, as it relates to time and time management, how to think differently about our relationship with time, and what to do in those scenarios where we feel like we are forced to come up with a new, amazing, innovative idea. Duncan spent 30 years at Disney. It is a treat to learn from him and to hear him talk through his tips and tricks. But most of all, it's just refreshing to get some new tools on how we can approach things differently. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. For me, being able to design my own day is a non-negotiable. As many of you know, I'm a bit of a time management nerd. So when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and more effective, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and I'm a bit obsessed. It's Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized, and I have a new sense of perceived control. My to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. With Monday.com, it's like I have a brand new operating system. There's no long list, and everything has its own home, its own deadline, its own team member that's assigned and associated, and it's color coordinated. We all have multifaceted jobs and businesses. There are many components to my business, and each and every one of them has its own compartment. Each division is always one click away. For example, my team and I have a dedicated board for this very podcast. Did you know there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast to air? It's the same exact process every time. and it's a system. We have the various key steps mapped out as micro tasks, and this allows for my team and I to stay in lockstep every step of the way. With Monday.com, I can zoom out and see the big picture, a roadmap view from 30,000 feet. And a moment later, I can zoom in and focus on a specific micro task within a project, within a division of the company. I could go on and on about the features that Monday.com offers, one of which is I've built my social media content calendar inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, that I like, and it's embedded into my overall Google Calendar. Another feature that I love is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to Monday.com if you want a free trial. And let me know on social media how it goes for you. Shoot me a DM. We can swap tips and tricks. Duncan, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I'm so excited to have you here today to join us, and let's hop right in the spirit of Why Not Now. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Well, A, thank you for having me. B, it's an easy one. I was standing in my office when my boss came in and presented me with the Jiminy Cricket bronze statue. Thank you for 30 magical years of service at the Walt Disney Company. And I looked at it and I should just be grateful. But the only thing that popped into my mind was mortality. I thought, shit, I'm getting really old. And about a week later, my life insurance policy was updated, and they'd run their algorithms on a white male, 5'10", 52 years of age, 165 pounds, cholesterol level, and they'd said, yeah, 74, you're out. You're like, oh my God, I'm 75% of the way through. And I just thought, why not now? And it was, people say, are you mad? You were head of innovation and creativity at Disney. Yeah, I was, but 30 years and 10 years of head of innovation and creativity. And I just spotted a gap. And there's this enormous gap in the market. We all hear from our leadership, you must think different. We must be brave. You must take risks. We must innovate. And all of their employees who are good people, who've been there for 2 years or 20 years, are sitting there going, that's great. How do you do that? And nobody's showing people how. And I've been doing that for Lucasfilms and Pixar and Marvel. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go create an innovation toolkit that makes innovation easy, creativity tangible, and the process fun. Because you can't, I keep hearing people talk culture change. You can't talk culture change. You have to give people a toolkit they choose to use when you're not around to help them think different and innovate. And so make it easy, tangible, and fun. So this was 4 years ago. I stepped out from 30 years with Disney and now do my own thing.
And was this, okay, this is fascinating. I'm so excited. So this was your Why Not Now idea, and you're leaving one of the most iconic brands in the world after 30 years of service, 10 of which were the top of your game, innovating one of the most creative logos. And was this a literal kind of, you greenlit it that day when your boss handed you that Jiminy Cricket statue or whatever it was? Or had this been brewing for quite some time?
No, it hadn't been brewing. I was very happy doing what I was doing. And one of the last projects I was involved in was designing Galaxy's Edge, the new Star Wars land. I mean, I'd sent my son's Buzz Lightyear into space. He's the longest serving astronaut in space. I built a full-size swimming pool down Main Street, USA for Michael Phelps to swim down. I'd done a Super Bowl halftime show. I'd done a U.S. citizenship ceremony with 1,000 immigrants on Main Street, USA on July 4th with a Thunderbird throw. I'd done the most craziest, audacious, outrageous stunts. I'd helped design new theme park rides and movie plots and storylines. But I was like, you know what? I could go do this for the rest of the world. And I love to travel. And obviously not at the moment. But I say that in the last 2 weeks, I've been to about 12 different countries without leaving my living room. And so it's a chance. It's as we get older in life, you start thinking about what's my legacy and what would I like to give back. We're all born creative. When you were a little girl for Christmas or your birthday, you were given a gift and it came in an enormous box. and you were so excited and you spent ages ripping the gift out of the box. And then what did you spend the next 5 days playing with?
The box. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why? It was anything you wanted it to be. It was your spaceship, it was your rocket ship, it was your fort. And then we go to school and the teacher tells us it's just a box. And our innovation and creativity starts to get challenged from a very, very, very young age. But you all hear people say, actually, I'll ask you, do you think you're creative?
I do. I actually do. I bet most people would say no.
That's right, because they've been told for years they're not. So do you think you could draw like Pablo Picasso?
Sure. I don't want to draw like him. I want to draw like myself. No, that's where I would get my limiting beliefs. You got it right there.
So now grab your pen and paper.
Okay.
I want to picture your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your children, whoever you want. Just picture one person. Get them in your mind's eye. Don't close your eyes, but you must not look down at that piece of paper. I'm going to give you 15 seconds to draw their face starting from now. You may not look down. Don't forget that beautiful smile, the dimples, those lovely eyelashes, the ears, the chin, eyebrows. Don't forget the ears, that lovely hair.
What I haven't told you is that I have scented markers that I'm using. So I also have a blueberry scent. Okay. To inspire me.
Okay, now. All right, so your 15 seconds are up. Mm-hmm. Now look down and tell me if you can draw like Pablo Picasso.
I can. Better.
You see? Rock shopper. So we're all, people in finance, people in HR, people in IT, we're told we're not creative. Well, that's nonsense. I define creativity as the ability to have an idea and innovation as the ability to get it done. And we can all have an idea. The biggest challenge for most of us is the older we get, the more experience we get, the more we jump into what I call our river of thinking. My river of thinking on Disney and the first 20 years of my career, public relations, very wide, very deep, very fast flowing, enabling me to make quick and informed decisions. But we are being asked to get out of that river of thinking more and more often, more and more disruptive. Goodness knows in the last 6 weeks, we're going to have to disrupt just to survive, let alone thrive. And so I just developed a toolkit to stop people thinking the way they always have and to help them get out of that river of thinking and think differently.
Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about just getting comfortable. So as in my experience, when I get comfortable with being uncomfortable and continuously kind of push what that means and that edge, good things happen. When you were at Disney, did you find that you were just almost becoming kind of comfortable with all these crazy things that you were doing?
No, I loved the ideas. I had no idea if I could pull them off. So, when we were launching Toy Story and I said, hey, what was Buzz Lightyear's dream? His dream was to fly, but he couldn't fly. And I said, well, what if he could? And they all looked at me like, oh, yeah, how are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to send him on a space shuttle. And everybody looked at me like I was totally mad. I had no idea if I could pull it off. If you know you can pull it off, it's iteration, not innovation. And so, but I negotiated a deal. And yes, I sent my son's Buzz Lightyear to space on a space shuttle. He's the longest serving astronaut in space. He served 18 months on the International Space Station. I also convinced NASA to bring him home when they hadn't planned on bringing him home. I phoned them up. I said, hey, when are you bringing Buzz back? And they were like, well, we're not. I said, well, what do you do with the stuff you take up? They said, well, we just open the hatch and push it out. I was like, you can't incinerate Buzz Lightyear in the Earth's atmosphere. I'll leak it to the world's press that NASA killed Buzz Lightyear. And so God bless them. They brought him home. And he's now in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
That's amazing. So for people listening and they're maybe just feeling like they need some change, some innovation in their life, and they have an idea, but they just don't know what to do first, or maybe they're scared, right? What are some of your tips for them in terms of getting that process started?
Well, there's two or three. We all live inside organizations which tend to sort to no because we tried that last year, no because no because that's not the way we do it here, no because we don't have enough money. And we all start, the more experience, the more expertise we get, the more we start with the word no because. I encourage anybody listening to start with the words yes and actually we'll demo it now for them. Are you more familiar with Star Wars or Harry Potter?
I would say Star Wars. But it's limited. Okay. I got to tell you, Duncan. But we'll give it a shot.
I'm going to come at you with an idea for tonight's party. We've been given $100,000, pretty good budget. Each time I come at you with an idea, I would like you to respond with the words yes and then build on that idea. So I was thinking I could come to South Dakota and we could turn your house into the Death Star.
Yes. And we could make the forest was it desert? Is that where they were in Star Wars?
Yes, and we could bring the South Dakota Philharmonic Orchestra in, all dressed as stormtroopers with their instruments, and Darth Vader could conduct them with his lightsaber.
Yes, and some of the deer and the elk that roam around, they could participate too.
Oh, yes, and we could do an intergalactic food and wine festival.
Yes, and we could invite the presidents from Mount Rushmore.
Exactly. Yes, and so here's the thing. Let me ask you, when we had finished, do you think our idea had got bigger or smaller?
Definitely bigger. I love it. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And far more importantly, when we had finished, whose idea was it?
Ours as a collaborative.
Bingo.
Yeah, bigger.
The moment you can transfer the power of my idea to our idea is the moment you accelerate its opportunity to get done. If you tend to be a reductionist, if you're reporting and working with reductionists, people who constantly shoot your ideas down, just remind them and yourself, we're not green lighting this idea for execution today. We are just greenhousing it together. And so signaling is very important. I very clearly signal, guys, we're in an expansive session today. You don't get to say no because. I took over a room. In fact, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank took over. Everybody has an art school within 5 miles radius of where they go to work. Their kids need a project. Well, what if they took over your boardroom, ripped out the table, and painted a greenhouse around the room, put a green carpet down, call it the greenhouse, and everybody knows when they come into the greenhouse what behavior is expected of them. They're expected to be expansionist. American Idol, Randy, Paula, and Simon, what did they used to sit behind?
A desk.
Yeah, and what was the role of Randy, Paula, and Simon?
Judge.
Yeah, the moment you put somebody behind a table or a desk, they will think reductionist. But you bring them out. So instead of standing at the front of a room and doing your boring PowerPoint presentation as you always have, and they would judge your work. By the way, in the calendar Outlook, do not say the word presentation, because then they're judging it 5 days before they walk in the door. Take your presentation, print it out, stick it around the walls, invite your client, your boss, to go for a walk with you. Start in one corner with the objectives, the success criteria, your hypotheses, consumer insights. Finish with your final recommendation. Cover that page because we know they read ahead. When you walk with someone, you will very quickly notice you turn a presentation into a conversation. And instead of judging your work, they will build on it. And be careful of your choice of words. If you say, what do you think? People will think reductionist. But if you ask them as you go, could you help me build on this work? Could you help me think about this a different way? You'll elicit a completely different response. The other thing I would encourage people to do is always bring in a naive expert to every ideation you run. These are people, they're chosen. Their only success criteria is they don't work for you or your industry. What does that give them permission to do? It gives them permission to ask the silly questions that you won't ask in front of your peers because you're embarrassed that you don't know the answer. It gives them permission to throw out the audacious idea. They will not solve the challenge for you. That is an unrealistic expectation, but they will say something to make you think different. And I'll give you an example. We were designing a new retail dining and entertainment complex for Hong Kong Disneyland. I had in the room with me 12 white male American architects over 50. That's called groupthink. I invited in a young Chinese female chef because she was the antithesis of everybody in the room. And I gave them the following challenge that I'm going to give you now for your pen and your other piece of paper. I asked them, and I'll ask you now, I'm only going to give you 7 seconds. You can look down. Please, would you draw a house? 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pen down. Let me describe your house to you, and you tell me how accurate I am. It's a square. Inside the square is one door. It's in the middle of the ground floor at the front. There are 2 windows. You've probably drawn bars over them. And the roof is the shape of a triangle.
Pretty much. Pretty darn close, yes. I have a tree and a chimney, though.
Oh, well, bro, and well done you.
So creative.
So you just went into your river of thinking, as did the architects, of what a house should look like. The young Chinese chef just drew dim sum architecture, which none of us had seen before. It was a round bamboo dish that your dim sum would come in with a pork ball, a shrimp ball, and a little Chinese lady waving out the window. We all laughed when we held up our pictures because ours were identical, because we realized we stayed in our river of thinking of what a house should look like. She gave us permission to get out of that river and think differently. On the way out the door, somebody slapped a post-it note over her drawing that said, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. 7 years later, the strategic brand positioning for the Shanghai Disney Resort that guided everything we did was distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. Another tool that's very useful is simply re-expressing the challenge to help stop you thinking as you always have. So let's say I was coming to South Dakota. You and I are going to go into business, and we're going to open a car wash together. Tell me the 3 or 4 essential ingredients we must have.
Water, soap, and cars.
Okay, pretty good list. So screw that. You and I are going to go into business, and we are going to open an auto spa. Now, what could we put in our spa?
Masseuses.
Masseuses.
Steam room.
Steam room. So here's the thing. In less than 10 seconds, I stopped you thinking the way you always do, your river of thinking, of considering what you know to belong to a car wash: water, brushes, soap, cars. And I got you to consider what could be in an auto spa: masseuses, baristas. So this tour was created by Walt Disney on July 17th, 1955, when he opened the doors to Disneyland. He said, "We will not have any customers in our park. We will only have guests. Not only that, we will not have any employees in our park. We will only have cast members. There will be cast for a role in the show." And with that simple re-expression, created a level of hospitality that's never been replicated or duplicated since. In 2011, had we have asked the question, how might we make more money? By the way, very dangerous question. That worked from 1920 to 2020. But guess what? Generation Z doesn't care. They care more about your purpose than your profit. Not only will they not buy your products and services if they don't believe in what you stand for, they don't want to work for you. Well, how the hell remain relevant 10 years from today if this generation doesn't want to work for you? You'll be gone. And so by simply re-expressing, if we'd said, how might we make more money, we'd have put the gate price up at the theme parks by 3%. Everybody would have still come, and we'd have made our quarterly results. That is iteration. It is not innovation. Instead of that, we reversed the question from car wash to auto spa, and we said, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point? Now, have you been to a Disney park?
Yes.
And what would you consider to be the biggest pain point?
The lines.
Exactly. So we said, what if there were no lines? What if we did away with the front desks in our hotels? What if we eliminated the turnstiles at the front of the park, the need to stand in line for your favorite characters' meet and greets or attractions, or to pay for merchandise or food? We didn't know the answer. If you know the answer, it's iteration, not innovation. So we looked around the world, and sure enough, RFID technology had been invented a long time before we decided to invest in it. Now, when you come to the Walt Disney World Resort, you receive your Disney's Magic Band in the mail. It is RFID enabled. It is your room key. You don't check in or check out anymore. There are no turnstiles at the entrance to the 4 parks anymore. You just walk in. You have your reservations for your favorite 3 character meet and greets or your favorite rides. If you want to pay for merchandise and have it sent to your hotel room, you touch it once. If you want it to your house, you touch it twice. If you've saved your lunch on your smartphone, I've got my hot dog with my pickles on the side and go to Pinocchio's Village House for lunch today. Hit save. When I walk into the restaurant knows I'm here. I touch table 47. Food comes fresh to me. Had we have said, how might we make more money, we'd have made 3%. But because we reversed the question and said, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point, the average consumer today has between 90 and 120 minutes free time a day they didn't have 4 years ago, which has resulted in record revenues on food and beverage, record revenues on merchandise, and guest data that you can't believe, because now 25 million visits a year are live crowdsourcing the future design of every product and service Disney creates by simply telling them what they like and what they don't. Another thing that we hear from every single industry is, oh, but I've got rules. Well, guess what? Everybody has rules. You know, if you're hosting an area twice the size of Manhattan Island with 25 million visits a year, you've got rules. But what if you broke those rules without actually breaking them? It's an incredibly simple tool to use, but can really help people think differently. Walt Disney created it. 1940, when he showed Fantasia, he wanted heat and mist pumped into the theatre, and the theatre owner said no. So he listed the rules of going to the theatre. It's dark, it's dirty, I have to sit down, etc. One of the rules he chose to break was, I, Walt, can't control the environment. So he said, well, what if I could? Well, that's not provocative enough. The more provocative your what if question, the further out of your river of thinking you will get. So he said, well, what if I take my movies out of the theatre? Well, that was an absurd idea. He said, if they couldn't be 2-dimensional because they'd fall over and I don't own screens? Well, what if I made my movies 3-dimensional? Well, if I make my movies 3-dimensional, what if I had people play the characters? Well, if I had people play the characters, what if I gave Cinderella a different land from Jack Sparrow and Davy Crockett so people would be immersed in her story? Oh, wait a minute, I'll call it Disneyland. It was also used by the founder of Netflix. He used to go to Blockbuster Video like you and me, and he simply got frustrated at all the rules of going to Blockbuster. So he wrote them down. You have to be kind and rewind. You have to drive to a physical store. You can only go during an opening hours. You can only get 3 at a time. They never have the one you want. You have to have a membership card. You have to pay a late fee. And he took one rule, the rule of I have to drive to a physical store. And he said, what if there is no physical store? And he looked around the world and he said, well, wait a minute. YouTube already exists. They're only streaming amateur content. Well, what if I just stream professional content? I'll do a deal with the movie studios. Nobody would have to be kind and rewind. Nobody would have to drive anywhere. I'll cut the rental off at 24 hours. Nobody will pay a late fee. I'll call it Netflix. I'll take my idea to Blockbuster 5 times. They'll turn me down 5 times, and I'll take them out of business in less than 5 years.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Are you ready for change? Or maybe you're already in a season of expansion. As we embrace this new decade, are you ready to take action on your own Why Not Now idea? Maybe that means starting the company, launching the podcast, writing the book, or doing more public speaking, injecting your why into what you are doing. At the end of the day, that is exactly what creates connection. And connections convert. My life work is to help guide women through this very stage in their life. I do this through the Renegade Brand Bootcamp. It truly is the career love of my life. The reason I love this program so much is because I'm able to create a mosaic, a collection of like-minded, like-hearted, driven women who come together to level up. They learn the renegade mentality directly from me, and I share everything I've learned over the past 20 years in business. It's equal parts education, collaboration, accountability, and community. We are accepting applications for our 2020 program, and you are welcome to go check everything out about the program at renegadebrandbootcamp.com. And as a very first step, just sign up for my 5-day email series. I uncover all of the questions about the bootcamp and help you understand if it's right for you. We've had some incredible women come through the program, and you will hear from them as well. You can check out the curriculum, the structure, the vibe, and everything in between. Many years ago, I went to Mark Cuban and asked him for investment advice. I thought I was going to get some real estate or stock market type of advice. Instead, he said, invest in yourself. Invest in your own growth. Invest in yourself. Bet on yourself. This is the best ROI you will ever find. If you're at that point where you are ready to take action, head to renegadebrandbootcamp.com. So I want to talk about innovation and time, just the concept of time. So many people feel overwhelmed. They don't feel that they have enough. You obviously have a very busy, full life. You're time traveling to 15 different countries in 2 weeks. When you look at productivity and time management, what are some of the ways you feel we can look at that through a more innovative lens?
No, that's a very fair question. When I started my role, the first thing I did was survey 5,000 people at Lucasfilms, Marvel, Pixar, Disney, etc. And I asked them, what gets in the way? And the 5 barriers to innovation that we found, number 1, time to think or lack thereof. We don't give ourselves time to think, and that's incredibly important. So let me ask you a question. Where are you and what are you doing when you get your best ideas?
I'm usually outside in nature, and I'm not in front of a computer.
Right. You'll hear people say shower, walking, jogging, waking up, falling asleep, eating, walking, talking. You'll never hear anybody say at work. Now, picture that last verbal argument you were in, and you walked away. You were so angry at that other person. You were so furious at them, but you walked away. You started to calm down. About 4 or 5 minutes after the argument's over, you're sitting down, you're calming down. And what just popped into your head?
The perfect response.
Yeah, the killer one-liner, that one perfect son of a bitch line that if you'd landed it, you'd have nailed that argument. But you didn't. Why? Because your brain in an argument is the same as it's very busy defending itself. The same as you are in the office, emails, presentations, talking to people, scheduling, PowerPoint. And we hear ourselves say, I don't have time to think. But the moment you gave yourself time to think, you went for a walk, you stepped into the shower, you fell asleep, you walked away from the argument, you came up with a big idea or the killer one-liner. So how do I get you in that brain state on demand when you need it? I run an Energizer. An Energizer is a fun exercise. It lasts less than 60 seconds. It's just designed to get you to laugh. The moment I hear you laugh, I know I've opened the door between your conscious and subconscious brain and metaphorically placed you back on the walk or in the shower. Why is that important? 87% of your brain is subconscious, only 13% is conscious. And when the door between your conscious and subconscious brain is closed because you're stressed and don't have time to think, you're only working with 13% of the capacity. But all of that experience that's back there is cut off and denied to you. But the moment you open that door, you can open the door to the other 87% of your brain, which is why you have your best ideas when you give yourself time to think. So, for example, if I were to ask you to list 5 of the most innovative companies in the world, chances are Google would appear on that list. So what is their magic secret sauce? Guess what? They give their employees time to think. It's called 20% time. In return, they were given Gmail, Google Goggles, Google Maps, and self-driving cars. I'm not suggesting everybody could take one day a week, but perhaps one day a quarter. No meetings, no presentations, no emails.
So good. I love it. And what's one lesson you find yourself learning over and over, Duncan?
Innovation. Well, so there's a couple, actually. So do you have children?
Yes, I have a son.
How old are they roughly?
He's 1.
Okay, probably a little young then. But young children, what's the number one question they ask you again and again and again?
Why?
Why? And why? Children are really good at getting insights for innovation that we're not, because we stop at the first why. If you ask somebody, why do you go to Disney? Your research will tell you they come for the attractions. Well, that's a couple of $100 million of capital investment. But if you paused for a moment and that childlike, not childish, and said, well, why do you go for the attraction? Well, I remember Small World. Why is that important to you? I remember the music. Why is that significant? I used to go with my mum. Why is that important to you now? Oh, I take my daughter now. On the 5th why, you've just got to the insight for innovation. She's not coming for a new capital investment strategy. She's coming as a result of her memory and nostalgia. That's a communication campaign, not a capital investment strategy. So when you're spending time with the other thing here's the biggest piece of advice, and I failed miserably for 20 years. I was too important. I was the head of global public relations for the Walt Disney Company. 20 years, I'd never met a consumer. And now if you ask people, are you consumer-centric, most C-suites will put their hand up. Then if you ask them, have you ever spent a day in the living room of one of your consumers? None of them can. Therefore, they're product-centric. They say they're consumer-centric, but they're not. The clues you get inside people's houses will blow you away. Actually, if only looking in your data, you're only looking where your competition is looking. So we were given a task by Disneyland, get more people to come and spend more money. Our data told us who could afford us, who had an affinity to the brand, who was shopping online, and who was a 10 out of 10 of coming this year, but they hadn't come. So our data was clearly missing something. So we went and spent a day with our consumer in their living rooms, and I was on the living room wall, and I asked the lady, how old are your children, 4 or 5? She says, no, love, 14 and 15. I thought, well, that's odd. So when we got back together, we found we all had the same clue. When we asked how old their children were in the photograph, they were anywhere from 5 to 25 years older in reality. We thought there's something going on here. Do we not print pictures of our children anymore? No, we do, but of their weddings, their bar mitzvahs. So you thought, well, what's going on? So we went back and interviewed 5 of the mums, and here's what we found. Mums will tell you at first pass, as will any parent, I want my children to go to kindergarten, middle school, high school, graduate, go to college, graduate, get a job, be happy, healthy, and successful. That's what we really want. Or is it? Or do we actually want them back in their little photo frame when we walk in the door and we are Superman or Wonder Woman, and they run and grab and come and grab our legs? And so we pushed a bit more, and here's what we found using our intuition, not our data. There are 3 bittersweet transitions that will take place between a parent and a child. Now, mums were telling us the story. I'm a dad. I can use my own intuition. I know where I was for all 3. These are the moments in time. These are seminal moments between a parent and a child. I know where I was when at the age of 10, my son turned around the corner, looked at me in the eye, his eyes half full of tears, and said, are you Santa Claus? And in that one instant, imagination, creativity, Batman, what had hurt so much was what he'd really said was, I'm not your little boy anymore, Daddy, I'm growing up. I know, and dads listening to this podcast will know, girls, you will not remember where you were that day, but you text your dad after this podcast and he will respond in a nanosecond because it was a seminal moment between you and him. I know where I was the day my daughter dropped my left hand in public for the first time at the age of 13 because she didn't hold Daddy's hand in public anymore. And the last one was when she used to go to college. Then she got a job up in Manhattan. We flew her up. We put her into her apartment. We hugged, we cheered, we laughed, and we got into the Uber and cried our eyes out all the way to the airport. Our going in hypothesis was if we build it, they will come. Why? Because that's the way we've always done it here. We're a product-centric organization. What we learned from spending time with our consumer was what was truly important to Mum. Mum does not wake up in the morning worrying about whether or not Disney has got a new attraction this year. She wakes up every morning worried about how quickly her children are growing up and how she wants to make special memories for them while they still believe, while they still hold my hand, while they're still here. That's a communication campaign, not a capital investment strategy, one that drove millions of revenue and record sales and turned a very product-centric, we know better organization into a consumer-centric one where it's now mandatory for every Disney executive to work in a frontline cast member position inside a theme park at least once or twice a year and spend a day with our consumer in their house once every 2 years.
Interesting. Okay, so I'd love to talk a little bit about social media with you. When you look at the space and just kind of think about where it's been and where it's headed, it's become more cluttered. There's a lot more content. There's a lot more noise. What would be some of the things that you would advise people who use social to build their business to do differently or things to consider?
Stop ticking the strategic branding content box. Does my message deliver A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? Stop doing it. Just be engaging and be authentic and engage with your consumer. Stop having a one-way conversation by thrusting content down their throat that they don't want. Every third image on Instagram is a commercial, and it's a product saying, I'm great. So what? Piss off. You just got in my way. I'm enjoying my friends' feeds, and all I get is a product that I don't want. So stop this constant need to tick the strategic brand content box and thrust it down people's throats every minute. Be authentic. Social media. Follow me. No, don't follow me. Connect with me. Let's connect. Let's engage. Let's have an authentic conversation. And I don't think it's a numbers game. I think it's focused on who wants to engage with your brand, your ambassadors, your advocates, and brands who are really good, like Disney. For every one negative comment posted on social, there'll be at least 100 responses not from Disney of other Disney brand ambassadors who love the brand, who will come in and support on Disney's behalf. That is where brands need to be. Storytelling, obviously, the art of telling a story is. I've learned some very powerful lessons of telling a story in the last few years. One of which we were designing a new retail dining and entertainment complex for Florida. The first 3 architectural firms in the rooms had spent goodness knows how much money on their presentations. It was stunning. They recreated models at the size of a ballroom right down to holograms waving out of windows. The 4th room we walked into was a little old man with 12 rocking chairs. He invited us in. He said, sit down, close your eyes. I want to tell you a story about a place called Disney Springs where a young man called Walt met a young girl called Lillian in 1914. And he went on to describe it for 3 or 4 minutes. Half of us were crying by the time he finished, and everybody knew which one we were going with because he didn't present an architectural concept. He told a story. And so I think storytelling is what's made Disney successful. But it's also about finding that consumer insight. And what Pixar does so well is, I grew up in the Toy Story era. I grew up when cowboys were gods and suddenly Neil Armstrong landed on the moon and you're like, oh, shit, I want to be an astronaut. I'm sure when you were a little girl, you may or may not have had a monster underneath your bed or in the closet. Well, surely that then was written for you. Or if you saw Inside Out about that teenage girl and how she was controlled by 4 different emotions, anger, fear, joy, and love, I think it was. We all know that during any given day, we're full of joy, and then somebody cuts us up in the car and suddenly we're controlled by anger. So surely that movie was written for you. So it's not just about telling a good story. It's also finding out the core consumer truth as to why that story is relevant and leveraging that on social.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I've heard you say before, Duncan, that if you haven't felt, I guess I'm going to use the word butterflies. I'm not sure this is how you said it, but if you haven't felt butterflies at work in a while, you might be unemployed in a few years because there's so much disruption going on. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's less than a few years, isn't it? Look, I
Yeah.
mean, so 2 months ago, I will put it to you that I don't know what percentage of over 55-year-olds and 60 had never used Amazon before, never used Uber Eats before, never used Zoom before, gone to the gym every day. And so will we go back to shopping as we did before? No, I don't believe we will. Will we go back to restaurants as we did before? No, I think a percentage of us will use Uber Eats that weren't using it 3 months ago. Will I go back to the gym now that I've got this incredible Pit Pilates that I do on my phone every day? No, probably not. In fact, I can do it in the hotel room, which is fantastic. The amount of disruption that's going to come. I mean, look, I spoke at 121 live events last year. I do not believe I'll be standing on the stage again until 2022, not only because people will be nervous about flying or sitting in big audiences until there's a vaccine, but companies are struggling to survive. They're not going to be sending anybody to a conference. So I too have to reinvent what I do. And it is about disrupting. Nobody is going back. All I keep hearing is, I can't wait till we get back to business as usual. You're not going to. We're going back to business as unusual. Sports, what a threat. If they don't go virtual really quick, they're gone. I believe sports will be virtual by 2035. I think there will be a virtual basketball game in the Olympic Games by 2036. Virtual basketball revenue is a huge percentage of what the NBA are getting now, and I think they'll evolve towards virtual basketball. We must think different. I think the acceleration towards virtual was coming anyway, but the last 3 months just accelerated the heck out of it.
Interesting. Agreed. And for those people who are, maybe they no longer have a job, or they are at this point where they're thinking, I've always wanted to go out and do something myself and take that leap into entrepreneurship, but they maybe don't know what that is. They haven't identified it yet. Where would you advise them to start? Like, how would they find that thing?
4 years ago, I said, I'm going to do this. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to work for anybody else. But here's what I did do. And this is the same advice I offer my children and any young people I speak to, and quite frankly, anybody else. Do what you love and you'll be really good at it. The only A I ever got in math was absent because I didn't show up for the exam. Well, guess what? I wasn't in the finance team for a reason. I'm really good at helping people think differently and develop innovative ideas. But I love it. And because I love it, I'm good at it. And so I decided to take a design thinking model and just boil it down and make it easy, tangible, and fun. I think if you do what you love, you'll be remarkably successful. We all went to school. We all had favorite subjects. And guess which your best marks were in? Guess what? Your favorite subject. So do what you love. You will succeed.
Great advice. Amazing. And a couple of rapid fire questions for you. What keeps you up at night?
Blimey, that's a good one. Well, when I was with a corporation, you always worried about, have I done the right thing? Have I done the wrong? Like, you asked, are there any questions off limits? I was like, no, of course not. Because when I worked for Disney, every time you got off the phone with a journalist, you thought, oh God, have I said something wrong? And now what am I going to do? Fire myself? What keeps me up at night? Procrastination. I'm supposed to be writing a book. Every single time I get off a stage, somebody says, do you have a book? You're like, no. Do you have a book? No. And so what keeps me up at night is procrastinating over sitting down and writing a book about this toolkit. And again, it won't be a book. It'll be a toolkit that people can use tomorrow morning at 9:00 to help them think differently. I think that's the big one. The analogy I would give you about how much industry is going to change is you and I will never shake hands with another human being again as long as we live. Why will we not do that? Because it's a habit. And by the time it comes back, will be after a vaccination, that habit will be broken. Now multiply that by every single industry and the change that's coming. For example, everybody who's thinking about going back to work, I would say if you work back of house, if you're a lawyer, if you work in IT, marketing, sales, etc., you're not going back to an office because your corporation is going to figure out pretty damn quickly that you can do it from home. You're going to save on your commute. We'll have less carbon offset emissions, and they'll save on corporate real estate. We are not going back to business as usual.
It's amazing to think about what this will be like, even in a year, this conversation, and how I think we're going to look back at it and just be will realize we were so in it, we didn't even have the perspective to understand how much disruption was going on around us with the consumer behavior and journey and just everything. Okay, so next question. Pirates or ninjas? Who is tougher and why?
I love pirates because I grew up. It's the eye patch, isn't it, really? It's all about the eye patch.
And that's it? They're tougher because of that. They can do it with one eye?
Yeah, exactly. Good. Yes, well said.
Okay, fair enough. I like the collaborative thinking there. I'm a pirate girl too. What's something that you've read recently that you found very interesting?
Yes. So again, just it's about thinking differently, right? There was a high school, the level of creativity on the planet is stunning. There was a high school in Japan who realized they weren't going to get their graduation ceremony this spring. So they got one of the kids who knows Minecraft really well, gave him a photograph of all the kids that were going to graduate, all the teachers that were on the stage, and pictures of the gym. And he recreated, and they had their graduation ceremony live in Minecraft. That was just stunning creativity for me.
Oh, that's really cool. It's amazing. And final question. So I've actually, if you could preface a little bit and give us some context, but tell us about the 27 calls in 27 days when you were first getting started.
Oh, God. Wow. Okay. So I had worked for Disney in Florida for a year. I was a barman in the Rose and Crown pub. I got back to London. At the time, there were only about 16 people in the Disney office in London. Now there's about 1,500. And I was determined I was going to work for Disney. And the career counselor said, not a chance. You'll never go back to America. You'll never work for Disney again. And I called what was called Parks and Recreation in those days division every day for 27 days until their receptionist got so fed up of my phone calls, she asked the boss to at least give me a half an hour chat. So I got invited in for a half-hour conversation, and I became the cappuccino boy for the Walt Disney Company, and I collated 50 press skits a day, and that's what I did for 6 months. And then 6 months in, I was asked to be the character coordinator at the world premiere of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. My job was to stand at the bottom of the stairs. Roger would come down the stairs. The Princess of Wales, Diana, would come in along the receiving line. If she chose to engage with Roger, great. If she went into the theatre, tough. And you think, well, how could I screw that up? Well, a contingency plan would tell you that your step on a stair is about the same length as an average human's foot, unless you're a very tall rabbit with very long feet. And with about 6 steps to go, Roger trips over his own feet and is now hurtling through the air towards the head of the Princess of Wales, Princess Diana, where 2 Royal Protection Officers took him out in midair. A very famous photograph of Roger on the ground with these 2 heavies on top of him and a 21-year-old Duncan in the back going, oh, shit, I'm fired. I didn't go to work the next day. I got a call. They said, where are you? I said, I thought I was fired. He said, no, this is exactly the sort of publicity we need for Roger Rabbit. I was like, wow, I can make a career out of this.
Amazing. And if you could go back to that younger Duncan and give him one piece of advice, what would it be? Do
what you love. You'll be really good at it. I took a promotion. So biggest regret, taking a promotion for the sake of the promotion. I was head of public relations for Walt Disney World, and I was offered, I was a director at the time, I was offered vice president of international marketing and sales. It was a strategy role. I wasn't passionate about it. I wasn't good at it, and I didn't like it. And so I created my own role and went out to Disneyland and then made my way up to, but do what you love and you'd be really good at it. I wish I'd stayed in what I was passionate about, but it led to this new role, which was head of innovation and creativity. So, but yeah, do what you love.
Do what you love and you'll be really good at it. What an amazing note to wrap up on. Thank you so much, Duncan, for your time and wisdom, especially right now. This is such a good, just a great encouragement to think differently, do differently, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?